Good evening. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see you all. It's nice to practice together. So tonight I'm going to start with this bold statement that earthworms are often underappreciated. That they do this work of, like aerating the soil and creating little tunnels that allow air and water to move through, as well as they eat some of the organic material and essentially recycle it as leaving behind some castings. But the interesting thing is that, earthworms, of course, they're underground. Well, we don't see them. They're doing this work and improving the quality of the soil. Probably, this planet wouldn't work as it does if we didn't have these things underneath the ground that we didn't see and that we often just simply don't appreciate. And Ajahn Chah, who's for those of you who know Jack Cornfield, was one of the elders in this tradition, and he practiced with Ajahn Chah in Thailand. And Ajahn Chah talked about this earthworm wisdom, this idea of doing practices that really can make a benefit in your life, but often goes unnoticed. Is often like underground, not so obvious and not seen, and yet what a difference it makes. I myself don't work with soil. I don't have earthworms, but this is my understanding, is that what a difference they make in terms of the quality of the soil. So what is meant by this idea of earthworm wisdom? I just like that expression. I think it's kind of fun. Well, part of it, there's a lot we could say that fits under this banner or this moniker, this statement. But what about this idea of just simply caring for ourselves? Because there's this way in which sometimes we come to Buddhist practice, or maybe any spiritual practice, with this sense that things should be different, that somehow we are lacking, that something's wrong with us, something is broken, or I don't know. We have all these sense of that's inadequate or insufficient in some kind of way. And then we come to practice with this idea we have to fix it. We're a problem, or there's a part of us that's a problem that has to be fixed. And this kind of what's fueling this, what's underneath this a little bit, is this sense of not enough, something's wrong, I wish it weren't this way, dang it, and everything would be so much better if it weren't like this, if I didn't have this quality, I didn't have this behavior, or whatever it is. So there's this little flavor, it's subtle, or maybe it's obvious, it can be obvious or subtle, the sense of, it's a little bit of aversion, like wishing to undo some part of ourselves, maybe to excise or remove or get rid of or somehow transform or change. There's this little slight feeling of, ugh, I wish this could be different. Why is it like this? And so perhaps we undertake meditation. Maybe I'll just say for those people that I see that are putting on warmer clothing, that this is the air conditioning comes out of these vents right here. So there's these microclimates. So under the stage is the warmest place when the air conditioning is on. And so just I don't know, state maybe what's that. So always thank you, Jim, for changing the temperature there. So there's this inner climate sometimes that shows up of wanting to get rid of things. And I could say some of this earthworm wisdom is, instead of this idea we have to get rid of and change and fix because there's something wrong or inadequate or insufficient, what if it's there's a sense of care that's born out of a respect and honor of our experience? because we care about ourselves. Let's have maybe some warmth. This doesn't have to be obvious or giant or big self-aggrandizement or something like this. But instead, what if it were just because we have some respect for ourselves? And that's what's fueling some of this practice. Like, yeah, maybe I'm going to work on this because I care about myself and I anticipate that my life will unfold in a way that brings more and more happiness if I do this, that I'll be able to bring more and more good into the world, I'll be able to support more people. What if that's what's underneath, what's fueling our practice, instead of this self-improvement project, instead of its care and respect for ourselves and for others? I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't start my practice with this idea that care and respect. It definitely was a self-improvement project. So I think it's most often we bring us to practice, but just this recognition that there can be this shift, this tilting in the way in what fuels our practice, especially the longer that we have a meditation practice. And so, what is something that can support this? Can support this shift away from a self-improvement project and something towards that's born out of a care and respect and honoring of ourselves? And some of that, there's a number of ways which we can do this. One thing I want to talk about tonight is this idea of metta practice. Many of you will be familiar with this word. Metta is often translated as loving kindness, or I often think of it as warm-heartedness or goodwill or benevolence, care. These are some of the other words that we could use for it. And I'll just say briefly in kind of like a big broad brush, maybe before I say that, I'll say for those of you who don't know that on IMC Monday through Friday, so 5 days a week, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., there's what we call happy hour. That's on Zoom, and sometimes it's on YouTube, not so often, but. And it's all about cultivating this. And for years I taught this a couple of times a week, this warm-heartedness, this loving kindness. And there's people that have been going like every day, 5 days a week since the pandemic. So what is that, almost 5 years now? 5 years. And they talk about how their lives are different and transformed and changed from just this, just regularly showing up for 1 hour on the weeknights. So what is this kind of practice that we're doing at a happy hour? Is this loving kindness practice, metta practice? We could say, again, this is a big broad brush, is there's 3 elements to this practice. One is to bring to mind an individual. We start with an individual that you wish to extend goodwill. We always start where it's the easiest, so often start with a lovable being in which there's already a sense of care for this lovable being. Some people use kittens or puppies or grandchildren or babies, or I know somebody who does squirrels, it's for whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. So there's maybe an object or an image of an individual. And then there's this felt sense of maybe this connection that you feel with this lovable being. It might be really subtle and it might not even be there. And that's perfectly fine, whatever it is. Then the third aspect is to say phrases that we repeat in the mind. So just like with mindfulness practice, we have mindfulness of the breath, for example, and then the mind wanders, and then we come back to the breath. With loving kindness practice, we use the phrases as a way, like I have a phrase, the mind wanders, and we come back to the phrases as a way to stay with this connection, with this warm-heartedness, this goodwill, this benevolence, this care that we have for others. So this practice of loving kindness is not about convincing ourselves of anything. It's not an effort to pretend or plead or, I don't know, something like, or demand maybe even that that there's this warm-hearted feeling. Instead, it's just creating the conditions for that which is already inside of us to arise. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's okay. In fact, that's what's expected. It's more just the intention of inclining the mind and the heart again and again towards connection and warm-heartedness with others. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. It's a beautiful practice. So it's about tapping into something that's already inside of us. We're not denying or pretending that there's a lot of awfulness in the world. We are not just putting on rosy glasses and, hanging out with unicorns and butterflies or something like that. It's just this practice of this continued orientation towards some goodwill towards others. So it's more than just a feeling, though. When we do this practice, it's not like we're trying to cultivate something that feels ooey gooey, or that's where I'll just use that as a technical term. Instead, it's often what can happen is this sense of openness and spaciousness and ease and warmth. As I've said, it doesn't always there. But when we're practicing it, it doesn't matter so much what exact emotion we're having. It's more like we're planting seeds. We're just, neuroplasticity, just bringing the mind back again and again and again towards this goodwill, this wishing well for others. And there's this way, I talked about it as being warm and maybe spacious and open, but it also can have a quality when this warm-heartedness, this metta arises, can have a quality of being a little bit bubbly, like a little bit energetic, like it might be an uplift in the heart. It can be soothing in this way. It can be calming. It can be very gentle. And it can also be like, wow, Shazam. It can be a little bit of kind of that thing too. It's beautiful how there can be just such a big wide range of it. And so some of the phrases that we offer with loving kindness, some of the classical traditional ones, and there's nothing magic about these particular words. These are just what the tradition uses, and so you find often variations of this. In fact, you're encouraged to find variations that maybe speak to your heart or resonate more. Is why we'll start for the lovable being, for example, and the phrase that we would say is like, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. So it's just this way for us to connect and have this encourage this warm-heartedness. As I said, this is not it's not so much a prayer. It's not an invocation to any other being. It's just this wish. It's just a wish, an invitation for others. So this idea of loving kindness, I said it expands out into all beings, and importantly, it includes ourself. Having kindness for ourselves. Turns out this is often not so easy. A lot of people will tell me when I'm teaching a metta retreat or have done some happiness, like, okay, I can do it for all kinds of people, all these beings, all these situations. Yeah, but for myself, it's not so easy. And then they just kind of ignore it. And I'm just doing for everybody else. But this idea that care for oneself is pretty important. It's this foundational practice, I would say, that allows us to meet the world with some warm-heartedness, as opposed to trying to get something from other people all the time to fill holes that we feel in our hearts and minds in some kind of way. So there's this part of not having loving kindness for oneself, there's some resistance to it. This sense that that feels selfish. I should have loving kindness for other people, not for myself. Or maybe there's this sense that, yeah, if people really knew some of the thoughts that I've had or some of the things that I've done, they wouldn't think that I'm worthy of loving kindness or care. So somehow they feel like they're not deserving or something. So there's some resistance to this. I just want to say that we often have resistance to so many experiences that we're having, not only resistance to loving kindness for ourselves, but just there's this way in which we are maybe in a subtle or obvious way saying, no, I don't want this experience. No, make this go away. No, this isn't what I wanted. I didn't meditate wanting this experience. Make it be different, dang it. Is this often this thing that can show up? So this idea of resistance, it's a natural response to uncomfortable experiences, and it just stems from our wish to avoid discomfort. Of course. So it's this urge to push away or deny or minimize the experience. And resistance, I'm using this word, it says no, but it can also just show up as distraction. This way in which we are creating stories or narratives, getting lost in fantasy, with things that we're remembering. Or maybe there's even ideas like, oh, I can't handle this, and off we go into something else. Off we go with our minds, or sometimes even we just literally get up and do some different activity in order to distract ourselves from whatever's being experienced that's uncomfortable. So it's this fascinating thing that I appreciate so much about Buddhist practice. We often can have this idea, and I know I did for such a long time, and it wasn't until I was helping Gil with his book on the hindrances that I really start to understand this differently. And that is, we often have this idea, okay, I'll get to the practice as soon as this bothersome thing goes away. As soon as, my irritation with my neighbor, my frustration with not being able to find a parking spot, or whatever it might be. As soon as that gets taken care of, okay, then I'll come back to the practice. But it's actually is the practice to be with the resistance. It turns out that's exactly the way to practice, is with the resistance that we're experiencing. I like the simile that we find in the suttas, where the Buddha describes that there's rain up in the mountains, and then the little trickles of water start to trickle down, and then they kind of join and become little streamlets that become streams, that become rivers, that eventually find their way to the ocean, right? So there's rain here that just comes together and finds its way to the ocean. And of course, it's not in a straight line. And of course, it's not that it doesn't meet, like, the big boulders or big obstructions. Instead, this water just touches the obstructions and goes around and keeps on continuing. So it's the same way with our practice. It's that we meet these obstructions. And part of the practice is to have contact with them. It's not to just see them in the distance and then go around them. So resistance, how do we work with this? Is to recognize it and to not resist the resistance. Just to notice, oh yeah, this is uncomfortable. I wish it weren't here. And then just to feel into that wish for it to not be here. That's the practice. Feel into, recognize, oh yeah, I'm irritated. I have this aversion, I want this to go away. So instead of fighting the resistance, instead of resisting the resistance, can we welcome it? Can we recognize, yeah, this is a natural part of the process? It's, I would say, a required part of the process. If it's just perfectly easy all the time, then that's where there's not a learning, there isn't a expanding of our capacities. It's just maybe, I don't know, going down a water slide in the summer. Something like that. It's just entertainment or fun. Not to say that practice can't be fantastic and lovely and all those kinds of things, but sometimes it isn't. And so by acknowledging the resistance, we create space for it to be felt and to be recognized. Maybe in the same way that the earthworms under the soil are making space for air and water, that for something beautiful to be grown from the soil, to make the soil fertile and able to support a lot of growth. So I'd like to introduce a poem here. I'm on this kick of doing poems. Sometimes I pull together a talk and I feel like, oh, that doesn't feel quite enough. There's got to be a poem somewhere that's going to make this better. So here we are. Here's Diana's attempt for making something a little bit more relatable. And I always like poems that have a little bit of whimsy, a little bit, of course, are relevant to what the topic is, but have some playfulness or fun or at least or have some imagery. So this poem is called How by Rosemary Trommer. Simple title, How by Rosemary Trommer. Not the tick, no. Surely it is not sacred. Do not try to tell me so, these repulsive tiny bloodsuckers. I do not wish to be impressed by their survival. Do not want to respect how they have thrived since the first flowering plants arrived on Earth over 100 million years ago. I do not want to praise their hard protective shells, nor how efficiently they swell, nor the ease with which they sense moisture, heat, vibration. Rather to vilify what disgusts me. Repulsive little carriers of sickness, vile little vectors of disease. What joy is there in knowing a tick is so effective and good at doing what a tick was made to do? Could it be greater than the perverse joy I get from my hatred? It is clear my repulsion does not affect the tick. Oh, clenched heart, oh, clenched fist, where is the line between what I love and what I resist? Is it true there is holiness in everything? How do I wound myself when my heart and hand are closed? Let my prayer not be to fall in love, but to open to the prayer I do not yet know. Let my prayer not be to fall in love, but to open to the prayer I do not yet know. This idea that, okay, we want to love everything, like if you want to hate these things, love these things. And I appreciate so much, right, Rosemary Trommer, she's really highlighting like how much we dislike ticks. And she's saying, but I don't wish for love, so to transform this, but to be open to something new, open to something else. Open to the prayer I do not yet know. And I would say that is what care for ourselves allows. It allows us to be open to something new. to greater peace, greater freedom, greater ease. This way in which it stops being me versus the world or us versus them. Instead, to be open to a different way of experiencing our practice, experiencing the world, experiencing each other. And so, this practice of metta, we can bring this to resistance. And maybe radical, this is not the most conventional way that I described it earlier, but Rampa Bea, he describes this way that I think is very provocative and very interesting. This idea of why don't we bring metta, this wish for others, usually we think of it as wish for others to be happy, safe, healthy, and living with ease. What if we were to do that to just all phenomena? So this is not a practice for beginners. This is in terms of metta practice. I would say this is something to do if you've already started with metta practice, or maybe not actually. I haven't tried this as a beginner, so maybe it works great. I don't know actually. But there's this way in which what I'm about to say can feel a little contrived. It can feel a little like, wait, what? If we employ the thinking mind too much. But there's this way in which it can touch the heart and maybe allow this something different to arise. Allow something different than love or hate or resistance or non-resistance. Instead, it allows for something different. And that is to radiate goodwill towards all experiences, towards all phenomena, to what is seen, to what is heard, to thoughts. Those are the three more obvious ones. And then, of course, to aromas and tastes. So an advantage of why this might be helpful is because it reduces our tendency to resist our experiences. If we are actively sending them goodwill, our experiences, then we're not actively resisting them. Maybe there's a little mixture there before the metta takes hold. But there's a way in which even to have a shift in our relationship to our experiences really opens up possibilities. It's also a shift away from our personal preferences. If we're going to have this metta practice for our experiences, whatever they are, that really starts to highlight how, oh yeah, I don't like that, I do like this, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, I do like this. Just how our whole lives are end up being about our preferences. And this is, how can we just meet what life is bringing us? And this is the type of care that can really be transformative. So an example would be, and as I said, this is not the conventional way of doing this, and if we think too much about it, maybe it just starts to feel too artificial. So the invitation here is just to allow the mind maybe to take the back seat and the heart to take the driver's seat, or something like that. So we could say phrases like, may this sensation feel welcomed. Maybe allowing this space to simply exist instead of the way in which we're always trying to push away or change or shove or manufacture, manipulate, engineer, create, our experiences. Instead, the experiences that are already here, already being experienced. Could we say, may this experience feel welcomed? Wow, what a shift that is. Or may this sensation be allowed. Really highlights all the way in which we're not allowing it. Or may this sensation feel cared for. Like this way of treating our experiences with respect and care, kind of like honoring what's actually happening. So often we're lost in our head with our expectations. This isn't what I wanted. I thought it was going to be like this, and it should be like that. This is often what the mind is doing. And this is like a radical way to say, may this experience, may this sensation be welcomed, may it be allowed, may it be cared, and then maybe this idea, may it feel at ease. Because there's this way, feeling at ease allows maybe it to arise and pass away and be released. Because this is what sensations do. This is their nature, to arise and pass away and be released. It's only when we get tangled up in them, and the tangling up often shows up as resistance. This way in which we are often saying, well, I want it to be a little bit different here. And so this is kind of a different idea. It's like, may this sensation feel welcomed. May this sensation be allowed. May this sensation feel cared for. May this sensation be at ease. So then it can arise and pass away, which is, the natural course. Things are arising and passing away all the time. Of course they are, but there is truth to this statement that what we resist persists. So there's a way in which we could direct this towards, maybe even more practically, towards the hindrances. Some of you might be familiar with this perennial list of 5 ways in which resistance shows up or obstructions shows up. One is desire. This way in which we're like scrolling, looking for something or shopping for something, or maybe there's a way that we're looking at our social media like the craving for some connection. Can we have some care for that experience? And maybe we can recognize that maybe all that desire is just wanting to really feel met and seen. And there's this way, if we say, may this experience be welcomed, may this experience be allowed, may this experience be cared for, may this experience feel at ease, is the way in which we are meeting ourselves, instead of waiting for something out there to meet us. Or maybe there's this way in which we have this aversion or ill will, resistance to a person, a situation, an institution, anything, right? It's endless. We can have aversion to anything and everything. But there's this way that it kind of like tightens the heart, kind of like there's this constriction whenever there's there. Maybe having some metta for this experience can uncoil that tightness, can bring some spaciousness and ease into the heart. Or maybe there's this way that's one of the entrances about sloth and torpor, this feeling like practice is slogging through molasses. Like, ugh, slow and heavy and sticky maybe, something like this. And can we have some metta? Can we direct metta towards that experience? Or maybe there's this restlessness. Maybe there's a way in which you sit here and then you're just going through the to-do list. Okay, as soon as I leave here, I got to stop by the grocery store. Remember to pick that up because I'm going to do this tomorrow. And, oh yeah, when am I going to get the oil changed in the car? There's all this kind of stuff that we might be doing when we sit down to meditate. That sense of restlessness. Or maybe we just want to leave. Like, oh, just get me out of here. Can that experience be welcomed? Can that experience be allowed? Can that experience be cared for? Can that experience have ease? And then the traditional list of the 5 hindrances, the last one is doubt. And that might be, is this even helping? Whatever practice we find ourselves doing, whether it's loving kindness or mindfulness. And is there this way that metta can meet the doubter? Maybe there's this tightness or hesitation or vacillation that we feel in the heart. Can that experience be welcomed, allowed, cared for, and have some ease? So this idea of meeting resistance with loving kindness as a way to help create the conditions that maybe fertilize the soil in which something really beautiful can grow. Something that's different than the me against the world or our incessant trying to just get everything right out there in the external world. So, let's see here. I had this phrase that I wanted to say, welcoming what we wish away. Often what we're trying to push away, can we welcome it instead? And metta practice can be a way that we can do that. So I'll end there and open it up to see if there's some questions or comments. Thank you. Does anybody have something they'd like to say or comment on? I can read the tick poem again. I like to read poems twice because you have to read them a few times, right? So maybe I'll read it here. I have to find all the pages that have it here. So this is How by Rosemary Traumer. Not the tick, no. Surely it is not sacred. Do not try to tell me so. Repulsive tiny bloodsuckers. It's funny. I don't know why it's hard for me to have a straight face when I say that. I do not wish to be impressed by their survival, do not want to respect how they have thrived since the first flowering plants arrived on Earth over 100 million years ago. I do not want to praise their hard protective shells, nor how efficiently they swell, nor the ease with which they sense moisture, heat, vibration. Rather, to vilify what disgusts me. Repulsive little carriers of sickness, vile little vectors of disease. What joy is there in knowing a tick is so effective and good at doing what a tick was made to do? Could it be greater than the perverse joy I get from my hatred? It is clear my repulsion does not affect the tick. Oh, clenched heart. Oh, clenched fist. Where is the line between what I love and what I resist? Is it true there is holiness in everything? How do I wound myself when my heart and hand are closed? Let my prayer not be to fall in love, but to open to the prayer I do not yet know. How by Rosemary Traumer.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was really interesting and helpful. I've been doing a lot of studying about mindful self-compassion, and your talk feels very similar. But one thing that I've took to heart is, in self-compassion work, it's often about really, sending kindness to yourself simply because you're suffering, And you're talking about sending kindness to the specifics of the experiences of suffering. So it's like breaking down self-compassion even farther, it seems.
Yeah. Is there a question, or do you
No,
want
it's
me
more
to?
of a comment.
Yeah. So this mindful self-compassion is really powerful practice and can really make a lot of difference in people's lives, especially because it's amazing how much inner critic and how harsh we can be to ourselves. And this breaking it down towards experience is less about the self, which the self-compassion is about, and it's more about, just what's arising. Both of them are beautiful practices. There's just, as you pointed, a different emphasis. And maybe self-compassion allows us maybe to just settle down and start to feel more whole and collected and steady in some kind of way that then makes it easier to send metta to different experiences or our resistance, I would say. So is that helpful maybe to say that?
Yeah.
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 Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bring it back here.
So let's say we start off and we start practicing metta and we accomplish what you're guiding us toward, maybe. Is it wrong to think of that as a self-improvement?
Do you have a sense of what would be the disadvantages of self-improvement?
I think it depends how you define it, because it could be, you could use it in a way that is very counterproductive, but you could also maybe use it in a way that is helpful. But I'm wondering, like, so the Buddha, he was a Brahmin and he left the palace and wandered around, tried all these different things, and then under the Bodhi tree, he woke up to enlightenment out of Mara. Is it wrong to think of that as that he improved himself?
So technically, I would say it's not. It's not so much that he improved himself; it's that he saw clearly that there is no permanent self, no abiding self to which all experiences happen. So it was a radical shift in perspective and understanding, rather than like just getting better, just becoming a better and better version of himself. He kind of like transformed into something different. But Matt, I understand what you're pointing to. Maybe one thing I'll say is this: what's implicit in this idea of a self-improvement project is that A, that there's a self, but maybe B, that there's something wrong with me. And it just kind of sets that there's something wrong with me. And it seems like there's no end to the improvement that can be done, right? There's self-help industry is, huge, right? So if you go to the bookstore, right, those aisles with the self-help books are big. So it's not wrong so much. It's just think of it as a self-improvement project, but there's maybe some nuances or different ways to think about it.
So you mean that just a better way of expressing that path, the spiritual path, than saying self-improvement?
The last thing you said is better.
No, so there's a better way of expressing the spiritual path itself than just saying I'm improving myself. Like.
Yeah. It's more, my hesitation is more about, it's just focusing, it tends to be focusing on what's wrong. And I'm not saying that everything's perfect but it's just it's the orientation or what's implicit in that. Thank you, Matt. Maybe we'll end there. So thank you all for your attention. I wish you safe travels home and a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you. And if you'd like, you're welcome to come up here and talk to me. Otherwise, have a good evening.